You know how the Marvel universe, or one could say the Marvel multiverse, has like a whole bunch of different universes with different versions of the same character throughout it? Like how there's different versions of the same character, but they have some similarities, but they also have some drastic differences. That's kind of like how Star Wars is, but just different than that. One of the big similarities between the canon and Legends, for example, this happened in both Legends and in canon, these three movie events, for example, but the events like this didn't necessarily happen in both. You see what I mean? In both timelines and universes, Han and Leia get together, have a kid, but the main difference is that in the recent movies, their kid was named Ben Solo, but in the Legends, his name was Jason Solo. Similar concept though, they both joined the path of the dark side, a lot of similarities, but a whole lot of differences too. Also in Legends, they actually go back farther in the past to get a deeper dive into the history of back in the day stuff in Star Wars. Like I'm talking about 5,000 years ago and stuff like that. That also helps expand on the lore of the characters to show you how strong they are. But speaking of which, this version of Luke Skywalker is busted because he has all the canon stuff from the movies, but also a lot more extra stuff. The longer this video goes, you're going to see how overpowered he is. Let's get it. I really don't want to sound like a broken record, but the same stuff he can do in canon, he can do here. Like how he's basically a swordsman, has melee combat training, ridiculous force potential, can go in your head, blah, blah, blah. He's basically the movie version of himself, but on drugs because he's on steroids when you see the feats in this video. But this is the evolution he goes through throughout the years. Before I even get on his actual visual on panel feats or anything, he has a lot of writer intent and narrative to help drive for the fact why he's so powerful. Because the writers literally want him to be powerful. It was literally stated in the Legends Star Wars Shadow of the Empire novel. It was implied that Luke was one of the strongest Jedi of them all. Later down the line in the lore of Legends, it was stated by Palpatine, you know, clones and stuff and all that craziness. They talk about how he could have been as strong or stronger than Vader himself if he fully embraced the dark side. He even stated that he could surpass Palpatine in the secrets of the dark side if he was to fully embrace it. Just in case you guys are not tired of me saying this. But yeah, characters do get stronger as time goes by. Palpatine and Luke Skywalker has gotten stronger as time goes by. And even with the fact that Palpatine has gotten stronger, Luke has gotten stronger to the point. But even Palpatine knows that his potential is even greater because he says he would surpass him if he learned the secrets of the dark side. Talking about conquer even him. Physical strength is not something I would say they're specialized in, but they have a decent amount thanks to the Force amplifying their different bodily statistics. He was doing a finger handstand. This is kind of like a similar feat he did in canon, like literally doing a handstand on one hand. And he did this for 2 hours straight, so he clearly has different strength than normal humans. That's some crazy endurance. It's occasions like this that imply his strength is magnified by the Force, being able to break out of these restraints. He would just big boot you in the face if he feels like kicking you. Quick challenge for anybody that wants to bring up how strong is Luke Skywalker in any video without bringing up Vader is basically impossible. Yeah, one of the main things to understand how strong he is comparing him to Vader. Vader's a legend, you know what I mean? In both universes, you get it. Do me a favor and be a normal human like us. Try to lift up a normal human with one hand and you're going to see how superhuman that is. And he can do it, so it's implied the Force increases his physical strength attributes as well and all his other statistics. He's not afraid of using kicks and stuff either. You guys already know he can mix his fighting with his sword combat or laser sword, like by throwing his lightsaber, then summoning it back, sparring session with Yoda, stuff like that. When it comes to his sword play, we get a lot more visuals in this legend stuff of actually seeing how good he is in melee type combat. Here's another example of how he can just pull up with the raw skills and handle both. Since he's a Jedi, he has to deal with Force telekinetic or telepathy type stuff. He battles beings while having to resist that stuff because he can counter telepathy because he has his own version of Jedi mind tricks and stuff. It was even stated that he's trying to shake off my psychic attack, which he can indeed do while he's battling. The Jedi mind trick is a classic theme. If you don't have no type of force abilities or force resistance or anything, he can trick you that way easily. But abilities like this especially come in handy on weak-minded beast creatures, saying if you're big and strong physically, but your mind is not, he can technically control them. Not strong-willed, he can control big beasts, like this, for example. So I can get a free ride. Different occasions of him controlling creatures. Just like the newer movies, he can make hologram doppelganger astral projections of himself. In Legends, occasions like this kind of prove it. One can make an argument that the canon movies got this idea from Legends. He can do. Even when beings have weird weapons he's not used to fighting against, stuff like this, he's had to compete against. In this occasion, he actually got handled, but he got to run that back. He used the technique of using two blades in combat to help even the odds. when before, the weirdness of the weapons was overwhelming, but this different style of melee combat was able to shift the tide and have him actually succeed this round. Yeah, this dude gets crap done. There's dozens of beings he can mess up. When we're talking about the subject of fighting speed, these Jedi all have that, especially Luke. Especially in Legends, it's implied he has decent fighting speed. If we're just talking about straight line movement speed, like sprinting type speed, Luke isn't slow either, because in this book, Legends, they talk about how he leapt from rock to rock swiftly. He covered 2 kilometers in about 2 freaking minutes, guys. Just in case you guys are wondering, 1 mile is 5,000 feet. 2 kilometers is above a mile. 2 kilometers is 6,500 feet. That's like saying, thanks to the Force amplifying him, he can move faster than the fastest man in the world in real life, Usain Bolt. Meaning Luke can move at over 35 miles per hour, jumping across rocks and stuff. He uses his speed in combat and agility and stuff to blitz beings, and he can also focus real hard to where even ships like TIE fighters that can travel through space really fast at dang near light speed or faster and stuff. In this particular novel, when Luke reached out with the Force, stated here, it was stated that the TIE fighters suddenly seemed to be moving slower. His reflexes with the Force and everything put together allows him to see things in slow motion. Like, it talks about how he sees different beings move and it looks like they're moving incredibly slow. Still moving slow motion. You respect how fast he is yet? They compare his strikes to lightning strikes, speed, fighting speed, to deflect attacks from AT-ATs, intercept and block lightning attacks. In this particular novel, let's talk about the subject when it comes to fighting speed. It's very controversial in Star Wars lore. The thought of a Jedi or anybody like that being anywhere near the speed of light is just unfathomable for some people for some reason. But in his later adventures in Legends, he fought this being that was extremely fast. They literally highlight on these beings' speed that Luke has to face against. They even describe in the nanosecond it had taken the first bolt to cross the distance between them. The hand had risen to deflect it. You guys know what a nanosecond is, right? It's literally 1/1000th of a second, guys. They talk about their speed like it seemed to disappear. So they're clearly highlighting the character's speed. So I've already kind of proven he's as fast as lightning or way faster, if I'm being honest. But one could say he could be right under the speed of light when it comes to fighting speed, thanks to precognition helping him out. There's a few ways you can look at it. How fast do you think Jedi are in Legends, or Luke Skywalker in particular? You know, the standard stuff, being able to send stuff from across vast distances with the Force and such. They stated in narration that a black hole is usually invisible to the naked eye, but he was able to see it with the Force, so he can guide them into safety and stuff of that such. It's hard to really Batman a Jedi because of their senses, because of how they can sense danger and, you know, the standard stuff like sensing their fear. With the kind of senses they have, they could basically fight invisible people. I mean, they can see stuff from way out of range or seek stuff that's hidden and can still find it. I mean, what do they need eyes for again? Because he can shoot with his eyes closed? Because he can feel what he needs to do. I mean, think about it. He can fight while blinded and even deflecting arrows with his laser sword while blinded. Because he states Jedi don't need eyes. Just like how canon Luke Skywalker can do this, Legends can do this as well. The X-Wing. You remember in the movies, he kind of struggled to move the X-Wing. In Legends, he can drag his X-Wing to shore with the Force with ease. His Force output is able to deflect stuff that is thrown at him by Vader. They can shield themselves to the point. In this particular novel, for example, like, it's literally confirmed that the Force could be like a shield. Big mechanized stuff like this, Luke's powerful shields can shield from that stuff. He can shield other beings from getting Force choked. It's confirmed. In this book, for example, the Jedi Path pretty much breaks it down that a good method of training would be lifting several tons. Pretty much confirming that lifting several tons is like another day in the life. Moving stuff like this just with a touch of the Force. Moves and hurls several beasts with the Force. Large statues. This size he can simply blast down. He's able to use the Force to support the weight of an AT-ST. Since these things don't exist in real life, there's been some estimations of its weight. I would have to say it has to weigh at least over 10 tons. Enough raw power output to pull up to an AT-AT and mess it up despite the size of it. This type of thing doesn't exist in real life, but Wikipedia has their own estimations of how much something like this could possibly weigh if it actually existed in the real world. They estimated it will weigh over 1,000 tons, implying his Force output can take down things that weigh over 1,000 tons at least, if we were to take them calculations seriously. So doing this is actually pretty freaking impressive. When he's surrounded by this many beings, he can make a Force repulsion all around him omnidirectional attack. Yeah, he can definitely lift way over hundreds of tons. Big old boulders like this he can lift. He's like a one-man army. He has the blast power to blast all these beings back with the Force. He can just say forget the lightsaber completely and just one-shot other beings that have Force abilities. Tosses Palpatine. When it comes to raw power in Legends, it would make sense for him to be at least comparable to the Star Killer. When it comes to raw Force output, it would only make sense because we know Star Killer is up there with Vader in the Legends continuity. Competing with Star Killer in Force tug of war is a big deal considering how strong Star Killer is. You guys remember the famous feat of Star Killer bringing down a Star Destroyer, something that totally doesn't have a real life weight because this ship doesn't exist in real life, but estimations online estimate vehicles like this, if they existed, would weigh 4 billion kilograms, or that would be like 4 million something tons. They talk about an analysis on building a real one and how much it would realistically weigh. You know, you can read all this if you want. But if we're to take this seriously and that weight to be accurate, that would pretty much mean he also has the strength or force raw power, just like Star Killer, to move or drag down 4 million tons at least, right? Just to give you an idea of how these big gigantic ships in Star Wars would look compared to actual skyscraper buildings in real life, the size comparison to it. So being able to move something this heavy in any direction would be like moving hundreds or thousands of buildings when you compare it to real life places. I mean, you see this whole city and you see how much space this is taking up? And you telling me beings with the Force have the raw power to move gigantic structures this big? Stuff that's the size of multiple towns? In the Legends, you guys know how Star Killer is, you know, from the Force Unleashed, the game. In this game, or book, novelization, he moved a Star Destroyer, of course. Based on this novelization, we know the Star Destroyer has an official stated weight to be at least 1 million tons. In Legends, other characters that are not as important have been shown to be able to move Star Destroyers with extreme high difficulty. The entire fleet of them, multiple Star Destroyers he can repel back, each one weighing 1 million tons each. So moving Star Destroyers is a constant theme in Legends. In the movies and in Legends, you guys know about Fortress Vader. You know how Vader had his own fortress. No matter which version we're talking about, he had a fortress. Based on certain angles, one could argue that it's like the size of very large skyscraper buildings or even the size of a mountain, possibly. Luke has the power shown in this book, for example. The ruins of Darth Vader's fortress. He basically reconstructed this fortress using the Force, talking about how the stones are swirling in the air, aka he's moving it with his mind, aka telekinesis. Talking about how this place was transformed. And in this book, which is basically a sequel to the other book when it comes to this fortress for Vader, it's implied with the Force he can actually collapse a fortress this big by focusing on the points of the structure for stress, aka weak points of the structure. He used the Force to help him break this structure apart. In this particular book, for example, to get a good example of how strong Luke really is with the Force, you got to compare him to other Force wielders. In this novel, you can see how they talk about them two clashing with one another. There's heavily implications that he was holding back severely against this being because they talk about here how he decided to defend and never attack back. They even implied this same being was no match for Luke, but he was a good and strong fighter. And this is where the stuff gets kind of crazy. This being is no match for Luke. In this book, for example, they stated that this being, for example, can manipulate the energy or flames in a star itself, starfire itself, changing the shape and stuff with the Force, manipulating starfire itself. They basically are talking about the Force no matter how small or big it is, aka the largest star, the Force is still bigger than it. There was even questions being asked talking about, could you make the sun explode? He said, I don't know, but I don't want to try either. Yet beings like this are actually weaker than Luke Skywalker in the Force. Heck, it's one thing to even be able to manipulate multiple continents, but do you see how small Earth is compared to the actual sun? Manipulating energies this big? Even if you manipulate a small bit of it, that's still above Earth level. Even a smaller bit of it, if you can manipulate it, that still will be bigger than Earth. You see what I'm saying? Just a little piece of manipulating the sun would still be bigger than Earth. If beings lower than him in the Force can manipulate stars with the Force, I don't see no reason on why Luke couldn't manipulate stars himself either. More lore on how strong Luke Skywalker is with the Force. In this novelization, for example, it was stated in this book that he had power that was on the level of destructive capacity that could even humble even the Death Star. Whether if we're talking about canon, Legends, a Death Stars are known to be planet busters. Look what it does to planets like this, and comic lore does this to an actual moon. Death Star is known for its blast power to destroy planets. And in Legends, just like how Death Star can do stuff like this, they're implying Luke has this type of potential as well. This implies he can use the Force to destroy an entire planet. That's insane. Yeah, you know how Darth Sidious took out Darth Plagueis, his mentor or whatever? In this book, for example, you get an idea of Palpatine's power. Why am I bringing up Palpatine when I'm talking about Luke? Because Luke Skywalker has actually gotten a couple scuffles with the Emperor One of the battles he actually kind of got messed up because, you know, the Emperor's a beast. But it's quite obvious he has to be somewhere in that range, which is impressive. I mean, I already mentioned in this video that Palpatine already said that Luke has potential to pass him. So in this book, there's lore about Palpatine's raw power output that basically make Luke Skywalker look good because these beings with the Force can make the planet itself tremble. They can shake the stars themselves. I look at it like this. Anybody that's strong in the Force to make the sun itself shake has to be respected. And considering how small a planet like Earth is compared to a sun, this lore all kind of adds up how they compare this power itself to the Death Star. It's just more fuel to the fire of what I've already said. Just to give you an idea of why fighting Sidious is a more big of a deal than you would expect. They even talk about how Sidious affected an entire galaxy. Luke fighting beings like this in the Force should not be slept on. In this same Darth Plagueis book, it was even implied, and back in the day, there were some users of the Force that could make stars explode, compel them to explode, you know, but if you don't believe me about Luke being this strong, beings that are descendants of Luke see him as a respected uncle, and they compare his power, or say his power resembles that, like a star going nova, comparing his power with the Force to a supernova? Are they trying to say Luke has the blast power to make suns explode? Novels like this, he can create shields, barriers, or defenses that he can keep himself still and not be moved, even to the point nothing can move him. Not even a black hole at the center of the galaxy itself, because he rooted himself like an immovable object. Nothing could dislodge him. Not engines, not a black hole. Stuff that not even light can escape. Legends was insane. Did you guys know Luke Skywalker was this strong? What do you guys think? Hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, but before I get going, thank you all for the donations. It helps out a lot. Respect Luke Skywalker in Legends or in canon. They're both strong as heck. I mean, he's the man, right? I'm glad you are enjoying your time on the channel. Make sure you check out the playlist on the channel to see other How Strong videos. If you like what this channel is offering, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later.